Pam Bondi adjusted her blazer and took a deep breath. The courtroom was eerily silent as the judge, the highly respected but deeply feared Judge Nathaniel Hargrove, took his seat. From the outside, he was a symbol of law and order. But Bondi knew better. She had spent months gathering evidence, connecting dots that others were too afraid to see. Hargrove was corrupt, selling verdicts, protecting criminals, and wielding power like a club to silence anyone who got too close to the truth. And today she was about to expose him. As the United States General Attorney working directly under President Donald Trump, she had sworn to uphold the Constitution and bring justice to the American people. The case before the court was an important one, the trial of real estate mogul Robert "Bobby" Esposito, accused of running a multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme. But Bondi's focus was not just on Esposito. Her real target sat on the judge's bench. 6 months earlier, Pam Bondi sat across from Special Agent Marcus Tiller of the FBI, a man she had worked with before. He was one of the few she trusted. In his hands was a flash drive that could shake the very foundations of the legal system. "This has everything," Marcus whispered, sliding it across the table. "Hargrove's off-the-record communications, wire transfers, secret meetings. He's been taking bribes for years. Hundreds of cases." Bondi plugged it into her laptop, her heart pounding as she scrolled through the data. If this was real, then the man who had sat as a paragon of justice for 2 decades was nothing more than a crook in robes. She looked up at Marcus. "Does the Bureau know about this?" He hesitated. "Only a handful of us. But we have to be careful. Hargrove has powerful friends." Pam knew what that meant. Corruption ran deep. If she moved too soon, Hargrove would slip away, protected by the very system he had poisoned. If she waited too long, he might destroy the evidence. So she planned a trap. She filed an indictment against Esposito, a man who had bribed officials, rigged contracts, and ruined lives. It was the perfect bait because Esposito had worked directly with Judge Hargrove. If Hargrove was as dirty as she suspected, he wouldn't allow Esposito to take the fall alone. And that's why Bondi was in court today. As she stood and walked toward the jury, she could feel Hargrove's cold eyes on her. He had no idea that she already had the FBI in place, ready to pounce at the right moment. She turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to seek justice. But justice is only possible when the system is pure. When those in power act fairly, without bias, without corruption." She let her words sink in. Across the room, she saw Esposito shift uncomfortably. He knew what was coming. Then Bondi pulled out a file and placed it firmly on the prosecution's table. "In my hand," she continued, "is evidence that not only proves Bobby Esposito's guilt, but also exposes a far more sinister truth about our justice system." Judge Hargrove leaned forward, gripping his gavel. "Ms. Bondi, stay on topic. You are here to prosecute Mr. Esposito." Bondi met his gaze, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Oh, Your Honor, I intend to do just that. But as we reveal the truth about Esposito's crimes, we will also uncover something even greater." Judge Hargrove's eyes narrowed. He was beginning to sense the walls closing in. Pam Bondi turned back to the jury and continued, "Ladies and gentlemen, by the time this trial is over, I promise you, justice will be served in more ways than one." Judge Nathaniel Hargrove gripped the sides of his bench, his face a mask of rigid authority. But Pam Bondi saw the flicker of unease behind his eyes. He was an experienced manipulator, a man who had bent the law to his will for years. Yet, for the first time in his long, decorated career, he was losing control. She let the tension settle in the air before proceeding. "Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to submit Exhibit A into evidence," Bondi said, holding up a thick manila folder. Hargrove cleared his throat. "Proceed." The bailiff took the folder from Bondi and carried it over to the judge's bench. Hargrove flipped it open, and for the briefest moment, she saw it. His pupils dilated, his lips pressed into a thin line. He recognized exactly what was in that folder. Bondi turned to the jury. "This file contains emails and financial transactions directly linking Bobby Esposito to offshore accounts used for bribing public officials, including members of our own judiciary." A murmur spread through the courtroom. The jury exchanged glances, while Esposito's defense attorney, a smug Washington insider named Carlton Reeves, rose to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor," Reeves said smoothly. "This is a clear attempt to divert attention from my client. Unless Ms. Bondi can prove these transactions are relevant to. Bondi cut him off. I assure you, Mr. Reeves, they are very relevant. In fact, they lead straight to someone in this very courtroom. Silence. Judge Hargrove's fingers twitched. Ms. Bondi, I strongly suggest you refrain from making baseless accusations. Bondi met his stare head-on. Oh, they aren't baseless, Your Honor. Far from it. She turned back to the jury. One of these transactions, a wire transfer of $2 million, was funneled through a Cayman Islands account just 4 days before Judge Hargrove presided over Esposito's last case. A gasp rippled through the spectators. Reeves shot to his feet again. Your Honor, I object. This is an outrageous attempt to smear. Overruled. Judge Hargrove snapped before Reeves could finish. That was his first mistake. A judge protecting himself would have sustained the objection and demanded Bondi stay on track. But Hargrove was panicking, and panic led to slip-ups. Bondi pressed forward. Your Honor, I'd like to play a recording. Judge Hargrove stiffened. A recording of what? A phone conversation between Esposito and an unknown individual which the FBI obtained through a legal wiretap. Judge Hargrove's face paled. Play the tape, Bondi ordered. The courtroom held its breath as an audio clip crackled to life. Esposito's voice came through, low and impatient. Look, I paid you good money, Hargrove. I need this case buried. Make it disappear. Then came another voice, the judge's voice. Relax, Bobby. You've done your part, now I'll do mine. You think I'm going to let Bondi or anyone else ruin what we built? Just stick to the script and you'll walk free, like always. Gasps erupted across the courtroom. The jury's eyes widened. Even Carlton Reeves looked stunned. Judge Hargrove slammed his gavel. Order. Order in the court. His voice cracked slightly, but he tried to keep his composure. This recording proves nothing. It's out of context. It could be fabricated. Bondi smiled coolly. That's an interesting defense, Your Honor. Because the FBI has the full conversation along with timestamps and authentication from the telecom provider. If you'd like, we can play the rest. Judge Hargrove's face was stone, but the slight tremor in his fingers gave him away. Pam had him cornered. And now she was ready to deliver the finishing blow. She turned toward the back of the room. Special Agent Tiller, will you please stand? The door to the courtroom opened and Marcus Tiller walked in, flanked by 2 other FBI agents. The crowd gasped. They had been sitting in the courtroom all along, quietly observing. Pam gestured toward them. These federal agents are prepared to present the full findings of their investigation, including bank records, signed agreements, and more recordings. She faced the jury. This is undeniable proof that the judge overseeing this trial has been accepting bribes for years. Judge Hargrove stood abruptly, knocking over his gavel. That's enough, he bellowed. This is a circus. I will not do. Your Honor, Bondi interrupted. You will let me finish. The entire courtroom was silent. Bondi turned toward the court stenographer and said, Madam Clerk, please enter into record that Judge Hargrove just attempted to obstruct the presentation of evidence against himself. The stenographer hesitated, then nodded and began typing. Pam faced the jury once more. Corruption like this is the greatest betrayal of our democracy. No one is above the law, not even a federal judge. Judge Hargrove's jaw clenched. You don't know who you're messing with, Bondi. Pam smiled, calm and unshaken. Oh, I know exactly who I'm messing with. And so does the FBI. At that moment, Agent Tiller stepped forward, pulling a warrant from his jacket. Judge Nathaniel Hargrove, Tiller announced, his voice ringing through the courtroom. You are under arrest for bribery, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. The entire courtroom erupted into chaos. Pam watched as the agents approached the judge's bench. The weight of justice finally descending upon the man who had spent decades perverting it. And for the first time, Hargrove looked afraid. The courtroom was in uproar. Journalists scrambled to capture the moment, their cameras clicking like a chorus of judgment. Members of the jury whispered furiously among themselves. Spectators leaned forward, eyes wide with disbelief. Judge Nathaniel Hargrove, a man who had presided over hundreds of cases, a man who had sent criminals away for life, a man who had stood as a pillar of the justice system, was now staring down at the cold, metallic handcuffs about to be locked around his wrists. But he wasn't going down without a fight. You can't do this, Hargrove growled, slamming his hands on the bench. His voice, once commanding, now carried the desperation of a man trapped. This is my courtroom. I am a federal judge and Marcus Tiller stepped forward, calm, methodical, and unfazed. And you are under federal investigation, Your Honor. He held up the warrant, crisp and undeniable. You will comply. For a long moment, Hargrove just stood there, chest heaving, his gaze darting between Pam Bondi, the FBI agents, and the bewildered jury. He was calculating, trying to find a way out, trying to find a lifeline. But there was none. Pam stepped closer, her voice sharp and unwavering. This is what happens, Hargrove. This is what happens when a man who was meant to protect the law decides he is above it. The agents moved in, securing his arms. Hargrove jerked away violently, knocking over his chair. You have no idea what you're doing, he bellowed. I've been on the bench for 20 years. I know things. I have connections. Pam folded her arms. Yes, you do. And they're all about to go down with you. The jury gasped. Hargrove's face twisted with fury. He turned his glare on Bondi. You think this makes you a hero? His voice was low, venomous. You think taking me down will fix everything? There will always be men like me, always be people who pull the strings behind the scenes. You're fighting a war you can't win. Pam tilted her head slightly, her smile small and knowing. Maybe, she said, but today, I win this battle. The metallic click of the handcuffs echoed through the courtroom. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel Hargrove was powerless. The courthouse steps were a sea of reporters. As Pam Bondi exited the grand doors, a storm of flashing lights and microphones greeted her. The press had been waiting for a statement, eager to broadcast the takedown of a federal judge across the nation. Pam took a deep breath, then stepped forward. Ms. Bondi, one reporter shouted. Did you plan this arrest ahead of time? Yes, Pam answered, her voice steady. This investigation has been ongoing for months. We had irrefutable evidence of Judge Hargrove's corruption, and today the American people saw justice being served. Another journalist pushed forward. What happens now? Will there be further investigations? Pam's expression hardened. This case isn't over. Judge Hargrove wasn't working alone. There are others, and we will find them. The questions kept coming, but Pam was already thinking ahead. Hargrove's arrest was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. Nathaniel Hargrove sat in a cold, dimly lit interrogation room, the silver handcuffs digging into his wrists. Gone was the powerful judge who had ruled over courtrooms with absolute authority. Now he was just another man facing the law he once controlled. Pam Bondi stood on the other side of the steel table, arms crossed, watching him. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above. Across from her sat Carlton Reeves, Esposito's lawyer, the man who had spent years defending the corrupt elite. But today his usual smirk was nowhere to be seen. He looked pale, his confidence shattered. Beside Bondi, Special Agent Marcus Tiller placed a stack of files on the table, then slid one forward. Judge Hargrove, let's cut to the chase. He flipped open the folder, revealing pages of offshore bank transactions, signed agreements, and phone records. Bondi leaned in, her voice like steel. We have everything, Judge. Every payment you've taken. Every bribe you've accepted. Every verdict you've manipulated. Hargrove clenched his jaw. You think this ends with me? His voice was low, but there was a hint of something else, not anger. Resignation. Pam narrowed her eyes. No. We know this goes deeper. She let the words settle. And we know you're not the only one pulling strings. Hargrove laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. If you think taking me down is enough, you're more naive than I thought. He leaned forward. You want the truth? The real truth. Pam didn't flinch. Go ahead. Hargrove exhaled, then nodded toward Carlton Reeves. Tell her. Reeves hesitated, glancing between them. I said, tell her, Hargrove repeated, his voice more forceful this time. Reeves swallowed hard. Then he sighed. There's someone bigger behind all of this, Reeves admitted. Someone who makes Hargrove look like a pawn. Pam's stomach tightened. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill through her. Who? She demanded. Reeves hesitated, then finally whispered a name. Pam's blood ran cold. Because she knew exactly who it was. Pam Bondi's fingers tightened into a fist. The name Carlton Reeves had whispered was one she had heard many times before, but never in this context. Senator William Stratford. A powerful figure in Washington. A man who had shaped policy, controlled alliances, and silenced those who got too close to the truth. And now he was being named as the puppet master behind Hargrove's corruption. Pam's pulse quickened. You're telling me, she said, her voice dangerously calm, that a United States senator is the one orchestrating all of this? Hargrove gave a dry, humorless laugh. Orchestrating? No, Ms. Bondi. He owns the system. You think I'm bad? Stratford has been manipulating courts, law enforcement, and elections for decades. I was just one of many. Pam glanced at Marcus Tiller. His face was unreadable, but she knew what he was thinking. This case just became bigger than anything they had planned. Reeves sighed, rubbing his temples. Stratford funds judges, controls prosecutors, handpicks which cases rise and which ones disappear. He looked at Pam. And if you think exposing Hargrove was dangerous, going after Stratford? That's a war you might not come back from. Pam stared at him for a long moment. Then she smirked. Good, she said. I like a fight. Hargrove shook his head. You don't understand, Bondi. Stratford has people. Pam held up a hand. Save it. You had your chance to walk the right path and you threw it away. Now I'll take it from here. She turned to Tiller. Get me everything we have on Stratford. Financial records, past cases, known associates. If this corruption runs that deep, we're not stopping here. Tiller nodded. We'll move fast. But Bondi, this won't be like Hargrove. Stratford has resources, powerful ones. Pam's jaw tightened. So do I. She turned back to Hargrove, watching as realization dawned in his eyes. He knew what was coming. This is just the beginning, she told him. Justice doesn't stop at the little fish. We're taking all of you down. And as she walked out of the interrogation room, the next chapter of her battle for justice had already begun. Because one corrupt judge had fallen. Now it was time to bring down the king.